Hey everyone, this is just going to be a little bit of a different video actually. I usually don't give my thoughts about anything subject matter wise in gaming. Maybe people don't want to hear my opinion on stuff, maybe they do. Anyway, this is kind of like a test for that. No new gameplay footage or any big announcements are coming. Disney games, starting with DuckTales, is going to come on Monday. I'm getting DuckTales 1 and 2 done next week along with the game musics. So if you're looking forward to them, they'll be up next week. But what I wanted to talk about just randomly, and maybe I'll start doing some of these random videos when I get a chance, review some games that I'm currently playing. If anyone has any interest in listening to me give my opinions on some of the big games that are coming out. But what I want to talk about in this video is I just got done playing a game that I bought actually back in February and never got around to playing it. I just wasn't in the mood to play the genre of game that it's from, and I'll get into all that in a second. I just sat down, I was like, I'm bored, I want to play something. I picked it up, put it in my 360, and I couldn't stop playing it for like 3 days, and I was determined to beat it. Had it not been for renting out a few other games, I probably would have just straight played it from start to finish, but I rented Sonic Unleashed and the Crash Bandicoot Mind Over Mutant game, and I wanted to play them as well, to send them back so I could get some other games. I have a subscription to GameFly. But anyway, so I just finished the game earlier tonight, and it got me thinking about games in general and this genre. The genre is RPG. Probably the geekiest of all the video game genres. Maybe there's one geekier, I'm not sure. But that's what I am, so hey, let's talk about that. And I know there's tons and tons of RPG fans, and probably a lot of RPG fans that do watch my videos. Now, I wasn't an RPG fan initially. I actually really got into it when I was a little bit older, because when I first started playing games, I was 3 years old, so I really couldn't understand RPGs. But I liked Dragon Warrior, but it took to the SNES, and two specific games got me really into RPGs, and that was Breath of Fire 2 and Final Fantasy 3 or Final Fantasy 6 in Japan, just to be clear on which one I'm talking about. And it was because not just of, you know, the artwork and the music that is amazing in those two games, but it was the characters and the storyline. Even for, you know, 16, 32-bit era graphics, those two specific games, the characters and the storyline was so well done that it drew you into the game, and you felt emotionally attached to certain characters, and you liked certain characters for their storylines, or you liked all the characters, and that's what the case was with these two games. And I found myself loving RPGs from that moment on, going back and playing every RPG I possibly could, just to find more games similar to those two, and, you know, of course being drawn to the Final Fantasy series and played every single game that's ever come out in the Final Fantasy series. Maybe a few spin-offs I have missed, but there's so many of them. But the core numbered Final Fantasies, I've played through each and every single one of them, most of them several times. And I'm not going to get into some debate which one's my personal favorite or anything. It's hard to debate which one is the best because they're all so good. I don't care if some people don't like 8 for certain reasons, or don't like 9, which is one of my favorites, or doesn't like 10, or whatever. They're all great. Up until Final Fantasy X. Now I'm going to start stepping on people's toes, I think, a little bit, and, you know, this is where it kind of starts going to actually a rant. And it just feels like, because a lot of the people that worked on the old Final Fantasies, that made all the old Final Fantasies, literally left the company, and they left it in new people's hands to make Final Fantasy XI, the MMORPG, which I still think should not have been a numbered Final Fantasy, and then Final Fantasy XII, which was, I think, the real big test for seeing post-old school Final Fantasies, like the new era, the next era of Final Fantasies, how they were going to be. And maybe because I grew up loving the old Final Fantasies, I have to be honest, I wasn't a huge fan of Final Fantasy XII. I liked the gameplay, I could deal with what it was. It didn't feel like Final Fantasy at all. A lot had to do with that it wasn't a turn-based battle system, which, you know, the new era, maybe fans like an MMO-style battle system better. I grew up with the turn-based, so that's what I'm more used to. Another big thing was I wasn't really attached to any of the characters. I liked them. Balthier and Fran, I really liked. And, you know, I could deal with Ash, but I never liked Van at all. Bosch seemed kind of plain to me, just my opinion. And Penelo was just kind of there, and also, it never really liked any of them. It seemed like more Balthier, Ash, and Fran were really more drawn out than the other characters. The best thing, in my opinion, in that game was the hunts. Finding the big creatures, hunting them down, getting the money and the treasures from doing that. Just setting up the hunt, and then having to figure out that, oh, you had to go in a certain area when it was raining, but it had to be just raining, or just after the rain, and then this big dragon will appear, and then you can fight it. You know, and all the other situations for all the, you know, the hunts that you had to do. I thought that was, like, the coolest part of the game. That was really enjoyable, and the game was fun to play. It's just I wasn't as drawn to the characters and the storyline. That may have to do with there was no real romance, and I didn't really feel like the characters were so emotionally involved with what was going on around the world around them. But what I'm really getting to is, in the game that I just got done playing, was Lost Odyssey. And I don't know who of people that are even going to watch this video have even played Lost Odyssey, but if you haven't played it, I cannot recommend it more highly than any other game I've played recently. If you like RPGs at all, the old school RPGs, if you like Final Fantasy VII or 10, any of them, pick up Lost Odyssey if you haven't already. I know a lot of people, this is coming way late because this game has been out for almost a year, but I think because of Final Fantasy XII, Kingdom Hearts, and a few other of the big RPGs that have been coming out, JRPGs specifically, that I just kind of grew tired of JRPGs. Like, I just didn't like them anymore. Like, maybe it's because they were going down a different road. The Kingdom Hearts, I don't really understand. I like the Disney. I love Disney. But that was the only part of Kingdom Hearts I really liked. I didn't like the other characters and the other, you know, things that are going on in it. I'll play the other ones when they come out. I hate it, Chains of Memories. That's just a personal thing. I hate that game. I don't like the card-based battle system, so I know one of the two ones coming out soon is another card-based one, one on PSP and DS. I don't know which one's which. They're named weird, but I'm not going to like that one, but I'll probably like the other one. I like the combat, but I don't like the characters in it. And that was what, like, Final Fantasy XII. The combat was fine, I just don't like the characters in the story. So I pretty much haven't played a JRPG since probably Final Fantasy XII. I think Suikoden 5 came in between that, which I love that game. I think that one came out after Final Fantasy XII, but I'm, you know, mixing up dates, but that was great. But the last one I played is either Final Fantasy XII or Suikoden 5, and it was right when they first came out. I played both of them. So I bought Lost Odyssey back in February, and I never got around to playing it. I just wasn't in the mood for JRPGs. So I finally sat down the other night and put it in the system, and it's like 3:30 in the morning, and I'm like, I'm only going to play for, you know, 20 minutes or so, and then I'm going to go to bed. I end up staying up for 5-6 hours and complete the first disc. At the end of the first disc, there is a series of cutscenes and a series of events that drew me in so much to the game that I had to complete it. And I had issues with the game. There were some issues I did have with it. The third disc is amazing for storyline. The storyline in this game is great. But the third disc, play-wise, I didn't really enjoy because I didn't level up certain characters, so it became difficult. I'm not really spoiling too much of the game, but it's one of those RPGs where you do have to train all your members of your party. Thankfully, there's only 9 party members overall, so it's not too hard to train them all, but I didn't up to that point, so I had some trouble and I was getting a little frustrated with it at that point. But after that, I played through the 4th disc, beat all the special bosses. It really reminded me of Final Fantasy VII, fighting like the weapon bosses and fighting these hidden bosses and finding them. Also, like Final Fantasy X had something similar to that as well, and some of the other Final Fantasies, and that's really the driving home factor here. Lost Odyssey to me really feels like Final Fantasy XI. What I mean by that is, Final Fantasy X happened, and then afterwards we had an MMORPG and a non-MMORPG that played like an MMORPG. Final Fantasy X was the end of that turn-based system. Lost Odyssey, because it has so many connections, because a lot of people work, you have Uematsu doing the music, you have Sakaguchi working on the storyline, Those connections alone make it so good. But it really feels like what Final Fantasy XI, had they worked on it, had the original people worked on it, this is what the game would have been. I mean, you have the magic system there, almost all the spells, they're named different, but all the spells are there. The way I was working around, you know, powering up characters, using Haste Daga on my team in Final Fantasy X near the end. You know, it doesn't have the sphere grid, it has a classic level-up system, but the skill linking system that is in Lost Odyssey is very similar to something that would have been in Final Fantasy. Like, for example, like Final Fantasy IX getting abilities from weapons. You also had a more action-based system of battle, like kind of like Final Fantasy VIII, where you had to press certain buttons. You have to hold in the trigger button in order to then, you know, release it, and you end up getting a perfect or not. Well, I'm almost at the end of my first part. So, hold on. I guess this will end up being a two-part rant.